Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a senior leader from the world of technology from Houston, USA, Mr. Shashank Akinapalli. Shashank, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for inviting me for this podcast, Ashutosh. It was my privilege to introduce myself in front of you today.
Thank you. Shashank is a senior data engineer with TCS. So, Shashank, tell me about your early years in India and what first sparked your interest in technology.
Yeah, so well, Ashutosh, I'm from the India southern part, so most of students are more into engineering or into the into the science, which is into the doctor or the pharmaceutical. So basically, I was more of a mathematical student from my childhood, and that drive me to get into my engineering. And I did my undergraduation from Geetham University, which is an autonomous university based out of Visakhapatnam. So that gave me an open doors to get into more of my journey into the engineering. So they have a 24 by 7 accessible to the computer lab and everything, and that gave me a kickstart of learning more of coding and programming knowledge. And they do have a very good advanced technologies in back in my college days. So that's where I was more into the database management system, unified modeling mechanisms, and we do have some fundamentals on the artificial intelligence back in 2012. So all this gave me a keystone to get into my career into the into the IT. So that I would say that is a stepping stone where my career has transformed from an individual into a professional.
Very interesting. As you look back, what have been some of your biggest challenges that you have faced while adapting to a new country, a new culture, a new education system?
So definitely one of the biggest challenge is adapting to the communication. So the language, what that the native American language is little difficult for understanding. That's one of the major aspect. And along with that, the cultural differences and the way we communicate with the people. But since I did my masters in United States, that gave me some good amount of time to adapt to the culture before I even hit to the industry for my professional experience. So that gave a good foundation, I would say, pursuing my masters where I was in my college for 1.5 year period of time. That gave me exposure to connect to the international students across the world, and that gave me a good experience.
And many people confuse data engineering with data analytics and data science. For my viewers and listeners, tell me what is the difference?
So basically, data engineering is basically in the previous we used to have a different uh, part of sections for each of them. So basically, they used to have an ETL process, then they used to have a reporting, and then they have this data scientist and separate. But now in the modern ETL, so basically this all has a generalized word, but the key difference is, data engineering is the basic foundation for any data analytics to be defined, as well as for the data scientist. So one of the best example I would give is like data engineering is like a building, highways. Okay, but data analytics is comes on top of that, where we generate different reports for the business stakeholders to predict, to look at the data to make a business decision. But when it comes to the data scientists, they build more of, they use this, they consume this data, and they build the predictive modeling and predictive insights in real time, where business can make much more decisions. So that's the basic difference between data engineering and data analytics, where they use for reporting purpose. And data scientist is basically they do statistical modeling, and they do a lot of more advanced AI mechanisms and machine learning techniques they apply to get more predictive insights for the business.
Why has data become one of the most strategic assets for organizations today?
So the main reason for this is because if you see, like, previously, if you look back for a decade ago, we don't have that much of data, and we were the technology was not that advanced where we rely on data. But today, the data is available in different forms. So even in the, like, even if you look for a decade ago, so the data was more of a structured format. So they have a predefined rules in terms of consuming the data, and they had a limitation on understanding the data and for making business decisions. But today the data is available in different, not only just a structured language, but it has driven in a more unstructured and in any form. It could be even the voice, text. So this has this enormous of data has become a vital role for building any assets for an organization, because today industries are looking more of real-time decision makings, robust business decisions making for making their business growth. And not only that, this also helps for avoiding any real-time frauds, like for example, avoiding any business transactions which are fraud, and even in healthcare to protect the PHA data. So that's how it become more more pivotal role in the data,
Hmm.
basically.
Very interesting. What are the biggest mistakes, Shashank, you have noticed that enterprises make when building modern data platforms?
Yeah. So now, from last few years, with the evolvement of modern cloud data architectures, so companies are migrating from on-prem to the cloud. So
Hmm.
one of the biggest challenges that I see from my experience working on different data migration projects for last few years. So we are migrating data from the legacy systems to the modern data systems, but still, the underlying the regulatory or else the automation, everything they're just copy pasting into the cloud migration. Still, that need to be redesigned. And while we are converting these legacy systems into the cloud migration, right? Basically, if there are any undocumented transformation logics, if there are any regulatory compliance that doesn't meet, so that those need to be addressed.
Hmm.
And along with that, with the amount of data that is available and the adoption of AI came into the picture in last 1 or 2 years. So still the banking and healthcare industries, they are still adopting to the AI because they do have a limitation with the with the high sensitive data that they are dealing with. But when it comes to the supply chain and the retail, they have adopted even AI into the data for making a real time decisions, as well as into the tracking of inventory information.
Hmm. Well said. What are the biggest challenges when migrating legacy systems to cloud native architectures?
Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges is basically understanding the systems. So we also need to know how should we leverage the cloud modernization techniques. That was one of the thing. And it's not just copying the data from the legacy to the modern. It's also about how we leverage the modern, and how efficient we can build our modern data. The data architecture that can capable enough of AI driven as well as from the regulatory compliance. And if you look at the data, in the legacy, we used to have a batch processing, which they used to run on a daily once. So, but if there is any failure or anything, right, it has to be addressed, and there is a lot of manual intervention that need to be taken care. But
Hmm.
with the modern data architecture, so there are so many techniques that are available with implementation and leverage of AI as well, and machine learning. So, the companies has to adopt these mechanisms, and if they don't adapt, I don't see a point of converting just from copying the data from legacy to the modern, unless
Hmm.
they use the full functionality features that are available along with data, cloud modernization.
Hmm. And tell me, how can organizations balance innovation with governance during a digital transformation?
Yeah. So basically, the governance as well as this goes both goes hand in hand. So let's say if we look at more into basically how it goes is basically uh, innovation and governance. Basically, they go both hand in hand. As I mentioned earlier. So if the innovation has happened, but if we don't implement a proper governance, that may lead to a risk. And at the same time, if we limit the governance, if we limit the innovation, but we focused on the governance, right, it won't help you for the growth of the organization. So any organization that has that the maturity of understanding that they see this governance as well as innovation as a key enabler for the growth of the organization. So because the modern governance, it not only just help you for growth of the organization, but it also help you for the metadata management, and in terms of autonomous of self-monitoring tools,
Hmm.
and incorporating the role-based security. So this all will be accomplished if they both incorporate innovation along with the governance, basically data governance.
Amazing. What role does data play in improving healthcare outcomes and patient experiences?
Yeah, so definitely it plays a very vital role because healthcare industries primarily they rely on the more accurate data. So for example, if they don't have any accurate data, right, that's going to impact more on the data quality, as well as it's going to impact on the claims processing. And not only for that, they also use that for any appeals and any for real time business decision making. So that's the reason it plays a very vital role in that. So that was a major thing that I would say, like, it's making a very vital role in the healthcare sector.
Mhm. Mhm. Which industry do you believe is currently undergoing the most significant data transformation? And give me an
So
example if possible.
yeah, so the more advanced is mostly into the retail and the what I would say, retail is the major one. What I see, still banking and healthcare they are making a good progress, but still
Mm.
because of the data that they are dealing with the highly regulated ones, so they're still making a little bit of slow compared to the retail and the supply chain.
Mm. Okay. How important is data governance in today's AI-driven world?
Yep. So because it is very important, the major because if you don't have a proper governance built on your ecosystem, data ecosystem, right? You don't have a reliable AI mechanism. So because the AI is using the underlying data what is available. So again, the data engineering is the foundation for the having the AI for adaptive AI, which is a more reliable and robust one. So data governance plays a vital role in terms of data cleansing or maintaining the quality of data, restricting the data, who can access the data. So
Mm.
that will help for a robust AI mechanism, and that will eventually help for the growth of the organization.
Mm. What do you, how do you see AI changing the role of data engineers over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so it's gonna make a rapid change. So previously we used to call as a data engineers where we do the coding, but now with the amount of speed what we see in the cloud as well as into the AI, so we are more like called as AI engineers where we monitor the self-healing pipelines and predict and building the predictive ETL pipelines. So and it's becoming a day-to-day part. So previously or in the legacy ago, if you look for a decade back, having just a technical skills is good enough to become a data engineer. But today, that's not the case. So you need to be well versed with the AI
Mm.
technologies as well as incorporating the data governance. And we should know the limitations of the AI in terms of incorporating into the industry. Based upon if you work for a banking or a healthcare. So that's how you need to be aware of not only just the technical skills but also the how the AI is drivening and how you can accommodate that into the modern data architecture framework is also need to be well aware of it.
Mm. Amazing. What infrastructure must organizations put in place before they can successfully leverage generative AI?
Yeah. So I think most importantly is the in terms of efficiency probably uh, basically what I would say is in terms of they need to have a cloud migration data architecture is to be in place, and they need to have a high quality metadata structure that can help for building an good data ecosystem, and they need to implement good data governance, as well as they need to have a required security role based implementations. And we need, more importantly, we need to make sure that the enterprise data system what we are building is a more trustable and reliable thing. So that is what gonna be a basic foundation for building good generative AI model.
Very interesting. Shashank, I have time for two more questions. If you were advising young professionals entering the field today, what skills and mindset would you recommend they develop for long-term success?
Yeah. So as I was talking to you, Ashutosh, I just mentioned that back in old school days, having a just technical knowledge on having a basic programming skills is good enough to get into the industry and survive in the industry, but that's no longer the game. So now, along with having the technical skills, you need to adapt to the industry standards where, how that, because the technology has been changing rapidly. So if you see like a few years ago, we have a legacy system that has changed into the Hadoop. Now it became into the cloud. Then generative AI came. So just having the technical skills is not sufficient for young professionals to get into the IT or to survive into the IT. So they need to adapt to the technology that they were want to pursue. That's one thing. And second thing is that they need to have some real time case studies in their college days to have a industry real time experience. That's one of the things that I would suggest. And they need to, as part of that, they need to develop their expertise into the distributed systems, cloud computing, AI, and business strategy. So these all will give some fundamental knowledge to get into the IT or into the into the industry much better, and that will also give the long term stability for their career.
My last question for you. If you could leave our audience with one lesson from your journey from India to becoming a senior data engineering leader in the United States, what would it be?
Yeah, well, so my journey from it travel, started off from India and came all the way to here. But basically, my experience with data is that I deal, I deal with a lot of enterprise data with a huge volume of data, and that over a period of this time, I have seen how the industry has transitioned from a legacy system to the cloud and to the generative AI. So the real impact comes from the continuous learning, solving the real time problems, as well as contributing to the broader technology community is a key vital role that will play for any individual to get succeeded. And as part of that, because I started off a decade ago where I was started learning, and my passion on the data has driven me all the way pursuing my master's in data science. And then that consistency made me to return into the data engineering, and now I started contributing back to the community where I started writing few research articles in last couple of years to based upon my journey and my experience on how the data has been driven and how this generative AI and the cloud architecture has playing the vital role in building uh, good data ecosystems. So probably one should be also looking at that aspect, not only just consuming the knowledge but also giving back to the community on the knowledge that they have gained, that will help them to leverage and also become much more successful individual into the industry.
Well said. And on that note, Shashank, I just want to say this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you for talking to me about your own journey. Thank you for sharing with us some amazing thoughts that you've had on uh, data engineering, data governance. As has often been said, data is the new oil. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thanks a lot, Ashutosh.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.